Possibly a shorter Blu-ray and DVD update video, this time for July 2024, where we have quite a few Blu-ray pickups, some DVDs to go through, and some additions to the collection were very kindly sent over by my friend Arvid aka Junkmaster3, along with my friend Tim sending me a few films as well, which is always appreciated. And so, starting off with the Blu-rays, we have a couple of steelbooks to go through, the first of which is the complete first season of the Disney Plus Star Wars show Andor, a prequel to Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is a film I absolutely love. However, when it came down to Andor, was this really a show we needed? Absolutely not. When this was first announced several years ago, to be honest, I genuinely thought it was a terrible idea, just completely unnecessary utilizing a character like Cassian Andor, who I just didn't really care for all that much in Rogue One. Well, here we are years later, and I am man enough to admit I was completely wrong. I will say though, this steelbook set was very expensive but feels incredibly cheap for what it is. It does include the 4K and the standard Blu-rays, but all the discs are stacked where they can be easily damaged, and the bonus art cards are just lazily thrown in where they can also get damaged as well. All that aside, out of every Star Wars project by Disney, this is by far the best. In terms of writing, cinematography, the overall quality, how it doesn't need to rely on fan service and cheap cameo appearances, this show is a nuanced and structured story centered around an ordinary man who unknowingly becomes an influential presence to help fight the tyranny of the Empire. And we know how his story ends thanks to Rogue One, but how did he become the character that we know? Well, this is the prequel, if anything, that over-delivers on that explanation, and although very slow to begin with, the pacing quickly picks up around episodes 5 and 6. There are 12 episodes in total, and everything beyond the midway point, such as the Prison Break storyline in particular featuring actor Andy Serkis, pure perfection. This does not feel like a project under Disney, and yet somehow they allowed the talent of Tony Gilroy and hundreds of other creatives to make an exceptional television thriller. I would highly recommend this show, and I cannot wait for season 2. Next up we have a steelbook set for a show that in my eyes has perhaps gone on for far too long. Yeah, nowadays I feel as though I have a rough, constant sort of love-hate relationship with Rick and Morty, this being the 7th season, and the first full season where co-creator and original voice Justin Roiland has not been involved at all. He's probably off shooting women with Nerf guns for all we know, a deep cut reference to all the various controversies he was involved with. That aside, however, the show is basically the same without his involvement, which was apparently very minimal anyway. We have some standout lore episodes with the new main villain Rick Prime, the welcome return of Evil Morty, which I very much enjoyed, and this season also features an episode so bad that I didn't even finish it, and funnily enough, with that in mind, I do actually have half a review filmed for this season. I think I genuinely got it to the point where I had to talk about that episode, and I didn't really want to watch that episode. I should really finish that at some point, but the steelbook set itself is overall pretty neat. I like the artwork on it, even if once again we end up with just another plain blue disc. 2 films I recently picked up for the collection that I sadly haven't had chance to watch yet, that being the acclaimed Denis Villeneuve Dune movies, Part 1 and Part 2. Several close friends have recommended these films to me, and so my initial plan was to watch them both back to back, but I've just not had the chance to do that, unfortunately. These are relatively long films as well, and I don't really have any familiarity with the original source material or the movie by David Lynch from, I think, the mid-80s if memory serves, so I'm going into both of these films completely blind, but I've heard very good things about them, especially about the second one, which I believe has outdone the first in terms of reviews and the overall positivity that it exerted, so that's good to hear. And this one is actually still sealed, so I've not had a chance to watch either of these, but more than likely I will feature them in a future update video. Moving on, we have a couple of Japanese animated movies, starting off with a couple from director Makoto Shinkai. First up is Your Name, recommended based on a clip of the film that I saw. I did like the look of it, and it seemed like some kind of fun coming-of-age style film, so I decided to give it a watch. Little did I realise it would be an emotional roller coaster with estranged sci-fi and romance connotations, where we have 2 high school students that find themselves randomly switching bodies, becoming one another, a boy and a girl to make things more entertaining, and when they decide to try and meet in person, however, they discover that they are actually part of a time paradox and they are switching into each other's bodies, going through into the past and the future, where one of them is destined to die in a natural disaster, but can one save the other? Christ, this one really did cut deep. The ending was very cheesy, but this film was incredibly satisfying overall. From the same director, we have The Garden of Words, and this is actually a short film. Just under an hour long, 46 minutes to be precise, but weirdly this got its own individual Blu-ray release. I say weirdly because other short films from this director were included as extras on other physical releases, but this film was pretty basic, but again had a lot of feeling behind it, being a somewhat coming-of-age style film, and we follow a high school student who frequently skips class to pursue his dream of becoming a shoemaker, and he spends all of his time hidden away in a park reading up on and designing shoes. He then befriends this random woman who is skipping out on work just to drown her sorrows with alcohol in the park, and the two become unlikely friends. And there's a great twist about halfway through, which I won't spoil, but I really did quite like it, and it definitely enhanced the film overall, but the ending, however, wasn't really anything special. I felt it was kind of forced with an unexpected push on the romance genre. Perhaps not a film I'd recommend, but if you do like Japanese animation, it might be worth your time. After watching Your Name, I was recommended this film, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. One hell of a title, and thematically, this is very similar to Your Name with the coming-of-age tropes, set around high school students with the odd sort of romance undertones, and we follow a male student this time who just so happens to stumble across the diary of a girl from his class, which was accidentally left behind in a hospital, and he sees that she is dying of a terminal illness in her pancreas, and she oddly wants to befriend him. And this was simply based around the fact that he's a stranger, then she doesn't have to worry about the illness being a constant reminder in their friendship. She oddly forces them to be friends, which was very unusual as far as that angle is concerned, but it did work to try and sort of wear down the main character until things become very overwhelming for him, and there's a hell of a lot of sadness to deal with by the end. I refuse to spoil what happens by the end, but it's very sudden, and not what you may be thinking, so I will leave things there, but definitely a film that was quite sad, but certainly had a lot of humour surrounding it. Next up is a film I've had sitting around in the collection for ages, that being Jumper from 2008. And this is such an estranged sci-fi film that appears to have a very niche kind of cult following, mostly because it stars Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden Christensen. And I love how Hayden, as an actor, has made an unusual kind of resurgence in entertainment thanks to his involvement with a handful of recent Star Wars projects from Disney, and his acting career is genuinely fascinating to look back on because he's only done a few critically acclaimed good movies. One that I will always recommend is Shattered Glass, which was one hell of a film, much better than this. But this is a really strange premise that follows the character of David, played by Christensen, who learns from a young age that he has the ability to teleport or jump to various locations simply by thinking about them, and this catches up with him in his adult years when he's followed by an elusive hunter played by Samuel Jackson, who is looking to kill off and murder all of the so-called jumpers. And I think the idea sounds better than the actual film. Some elements were fun, but overall this was a very underwhelming execution of said ideas. Next up, we have a French comedy that really surprised me overall. A close friend introduced me to this film, and I had to grab it for the collection. That being Untouchable from 2011, where this film does seem to slip under different names. The Intouchables, Untouchables, just to confuse things, maybe something to do with the translation. But anyway, this genuinely might be one of the best films I have seen all year, thus far anyway. It's based on a true story, being a heartfelt comedy about an unlikely friendship between two men that would have probably never crossed paths. Philippe is an extremely wealthy millionaire looking for a new care assistant because he's paralysed from the neck down, and Driz is an underdog-style character down on his luck, applying for jobs and deliberately not getting them just to receive government benefits. But to his surprise, he gets the job as Philip's carer, and making for some painfully funny moments watching him try to assist this poor man. I absolutely adored so many scenes in this film, but he keeps at the job, and the pair forge a very close friendship, and overall it's a very enjoyable feel-good film, and I cannot recommend this highly enough. Of course, I do already own this film on DVD, but I decided to grab the Blu-ray super cheap online. That, of course, being the South Park movie, bigger, longer, and uncut. And I grabbed this because it includes an exclusive commentary track, and it's overall, as far as the Blu-ray goes, a sharper rendition of the film, which I did end up rewatching for the 25th anniversary. And the film has overall aged incredibly well. Lots of topical discussion points about censorship from over the past 25 years, and it's fun to look back on this as a piece of classic South Park. I do kind of regret buying this set, however, because once I'd already gotten this, the 4K re-release was revealed, and yeah, I kind of wanted that, but oh well, it's not the end of the world. I can always sell this on at some point and grab the more up-to-date copy. I am curious if the 4K resolution even makes that much of a difference for something like South Park. If you have a copy of the film on 4K, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know more about the actual quality of the release. Next up we have The Marvels, the sequel to Captain Marvel, and no surprise, this is still sealed and therefore I haven't watched it yet. I've heard nothing but really bad things about this film, unfortunately. I was trying to catch up on all the MCU stuff that I haven't seen yet, with one or two exceptions, obviously, but I just can't bring myself to watch this one. I know there's an interesting post-credit scene linking to the X-Men, bringing those characters into the MCU to an extent, but otherwise, I'm just not interested in this film. If I ever do get around to watching it, I may feature it in a future update video, or maybe even a Marvel collection video. That was something I was considering doing since the last one I did of those was probably about 5 years ago now, and there's been so many things released from Marvel since then, so that could be quite fun. But yeah, I don't really have any plans to watch this anytime soon, that's for sure. A couple of Pixar movies that I've finally gotten around to watching. First up is Turning Red, a film that I'd heard all sorts of mixed opinions about, and funnily enough, the first ever YouTube short I uploaded to the channel was unboxing this Blu-ray and how I received a completely destroyed version from Amazon, but here we are with the replacement over a year later, and I've finally gotten around to watching it, and I must admit, it wasn't as horrible as the comments were saying. I just didn't really connect with it for obvious reasons. I really did like the animation and the stylistic choice for these characters, but the whole film is essentially an allegory for a girl recognizing certain changes within herself, going through puberty and whatnot, and all of that revolves around a young girl called May struggling to control her emotions, whereby she turns into a red panda thanks to a bizarre family curse. Really strange film in that sense. Overall, not one of Pixar's best. I wouldn't really say it was their worst film ever, but it's just a film that I didn't really connect with, and probably a film I won't rewatch anytime soon. Next up is Lightyear, a film I honestly avoided completely, hearing this was genuinely Pixar's worst film. I'm pretty sure this performed the worst overall for the studio financially, but honestly, I actually enjoyed this for the most part. I think the idea is fun, that this is the film that Andy would have maybe have seen as a child, and that this would have inspired his love for Buzz Lightyear. Then again, having said that, we do also have Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, which I enjoyed a hell of a lot more than this movie. Very entertaining 2D animated storyline. But with this film, it sees Buzz, now voiced by Chris Evans instead of Tim Allen, trying to fix a mistake he made which leaves his entire team stranded on an uncharted planet. There's a plot twist that I found very frustrating involving Emperor Zurg, who is of course the main villain of the sort of Buzz Lightyear universe as it stands. And really the only character I actually enjoyed and liked from this film was the robotic cat named Socks, who provided a lot of entertaining comic relief. Just overall a strange film. I didn't hate it, but it's not really something I would really have asked for, and I don't really see myself revisiting this anytime soon either. Sticking with the theme of animation, we have the DreamWorks movie Megamind, and I well and truly slept on this movie and only really knew about it from various sort of memes on the internet, but then the studio decided to make a straight-to-streaming sequel to this film and a streaming show continuation which audiences completely hated. And that kind of caught my attention, looking at the sort of poor animation quality of the sequel, how none of the original voice cast returned. But having not seen the original, I did want to check it out and see what all the fuss was about, and overall I was very entertained by this, particularly by the voice acting, which really enhances the characters. I really loved the chemistry between Will Ferrell as Megamind and David Cross playing his sidekick Minion. Apparently they had to rename Minion in the sequel to Chum or something because of licensing surrounding those little yellow Tic Tac bastards from Illumination. But that aside, this film is overall very imaginative, a solid storyline which I loved all the ideas surrounding, and I do hope that one day this film does receive a proper sequel that people will actually enjoy. Looking at the stuff my friend Tim very kindly sent over, before we do move into the DVDs completely, he did include one Blu-ray in the parcel he sent across, and that being a film I genuinely never even heard of before, Clint Eastwood starring in Tightrope. And based on what I've read, I am very intrigued to give this one a watch, so I will likely feature this one in a future update video. Moving into the DVDs now, first up we have Primer, which I love the tagline for this one, described as Donnie Darko for grown-ups, which sounds fun. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of this film. I do already have this one in the collection, so this is a duplicate. I can just use this as trade bait with other friends, but this will definitely spur me on to check out the film. I've heard very interesting things about it, and to be honest, I had kind of forgotten about the film generally, so it's a good job that Tim did send this over to give me a gentle reminder to check out that movie. And from the same Tartan Video DVD release, we have this film, which I'm very intrigued to check out. I'd never heard of this before. It's a French movie starring Vincent Cassel, who I know from the film La Haine, that being Irreversible, which has a very trippy cover design where it's obviously reversed. I love the creativity behind that, but I've read very good things about this movie, so I will prioritize giving this one a watch. Next up we have a TV series that, to be honest, I have no familiarity with at all. From Michael Palin and Terry Jones of Monty Python fame, we have The Complete Ripping Yarns, which is a comedy from the 70s that no doubt I will enjoy. It seems to have only a handful of episodes, and some episodes that apparently were never even completed, which is a shame, but I'm intrigued to check out this set regardless, and I'm sure that I will enjoy the series. And saving the worst for last, we have two CGI schlockfests, being Ape versus Mecha Ape. Kinda bugs me how the creatures aren't corresponding to their names in the title. And Monster Armageddon, which looks horrendous. Are those literally the sharks from Sharknado? Oh, you've seen one of these films. You've seen them all. Next up, we have a selection of films sent over by my good friend Arvid, aka Junkmaster3. You can check out his channel, I'll put a link down below to him in the description. And there are various titles here, some I've actually been wanting to check out for ages, and several that I have no familiarity with whatsoever, to the point where I've actually been warned about them, so that doesn't sound promising. But first up anyway, we have the original Bill and Ted movies. I'm pretty sure there's a third one that came out a few years ago, but I might be wrong. I've never seen any of these, but I've heard mostly positive things about them. We have the original film, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and then Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, so I'm intrigued to see what these will be like. Steel Dawn, starring Patrick Swayze, an estranged sci-fi movie from the looks of things. Silver, which is a very poorly reviewed revenge film. Tokyo Fist, this is a film I've been meaning to check out for ages, and I do already have this in the collection, but this is the unrated director's cut, and I'm pretty sure the one that I already have is just the standard release, so I'm intrigued to check this film out regardless, and having an unrated cut is certainly preferred. Next up is Silent Night, Deadly Night, which appears to be a festive-themed horror movie released by Arrow Video. Stanley, which is apparently an awful movie experience. I did read the back cover, and I can safely say I will not be prioritizing watching this. Hillside Cannibals, the director's cut. Lady Terminator, the tagline on this one did crack me up. Motel Hell, which I have no familiarity with whatsoever. And finally from Arvid we have Invisible Temptation, which surprisingly does have a decent rating online, so I may give this one a watch sooner rather than later. Last couple of titles, we have The Founder starring Michael Keaton, which I genuinely really enjoyed this. It's an eye-opening film looking at the origins behind the fast food titan McDonald's. And I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Keaton plays Illinois salesman Ray Kroc, who stumbles upon the genius fast food idea and invests in that idea only to screw over his business partners by having more wild, sort of vivid imagination for franchising the company. Very well acted. I really enjoyed Nick Offerman playing one of the McDonald brothers in this as well, and I found the cinematography excellent and the story was very solid overall. Finally, we have the latest South Park DVD release, Joining the Pandaverse, and I did do a full review discussing this special. Genuinely, I would say this is one of the best pieces of satire Trey Parker and Matt Stone have done in a very long time. An excellent deconstruction of Disney and franchise fatigue. Lots to cover in this special, so if you do want to hear my full thoughts on this one, you can check out the video on my channel. Anyway, that's going to do it for my Blu-ray and DVD update for July 2024. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments if there's anything I've featured in this video that you would like to see a more in-depth review on. And for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?